Give me 1 second. Well, good. So
I'm
thank
trying
you
to
so
also
much.
advertise the census.
Yes,
Oh, good.
I'm so
Today,
excited to have a cafecito virtual with Heidi White from Durham Tech Community College and with Juan Hernandez. Salud. Salud. I'm so glad you guys are joining me this afternoon just to learn about the community college system and also some lessons that you have learned assisting non-U.S. citizens. So Heidi, I don't know if you want to just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of how you end up in this important role, and then we can go from there.
Sure. So my name is Heidi White, and I work as the Director of International Student Services and Study Abroad at Durham Tech in Durham, North Carolina. I've been in this position almost 8 years, I guess. And prior to that, I actually had worked at a lot of different universities in North Carolina and other community colleges, teaching and administering with either international students or study abroad students. So I've been in the international education field for a really long time. My current role at Durham Tech, because every college is organized a little bit differently, my current role at Durham Tech is working with anyone who is not a U.S. citizen. Now, that doesn't mean I won't talk to a citizen, but anyone who is a non-U.S. citizen who is interested in pursuing some kind of educational goal. So they can, enter into the college at any point, and either I help them with that process or I refer them to someone else who might help them with a more specialized department. So that can be, an undocumented student, a DACA student, a student with permanent residency, a refugee, anyone who's on any of the visas that run the alphabet. And then at Durham Tech, we also sponsor international students on the F1 student visa. So I work with all of those students and with all the required government compliance and reporting for that as well. As a part of the job, we're trying to go out into the community and tell people about the options at Durham Tech or any other higher education institution. I'm advocating for education at any level. It doesn't have to be at my particular school. And we talk about the options, at parent nights, at community events, and in actual school classrooms. We also, of course, on campus or off campus, meet with individual students and their families about opportunities. And again, those opportunities really can range from learning English. We have, ESL programs on most community college campuses. Just taking a class or a course for some kind of job skill, a more defined certificate, diploma, or degree in the technical areas that help you get jobs, and also students who want university transfer. So they do part of that degree program at the community college, and then they apply to a university to complete that bachelor's degree and possibly master's or medical school or, whatever they want to do beyond that. So we just try to talk about all those options and the benefits and, how all that might work and kind of lay out that plan. One benefit of community colleges is we try to take the student wherever they are. So we also have adult high school and high school equivalency programs as well. So if someone hasn't completed the high school equivalency or high school, they can actually still do that at the community college. And so we could start there. And then if they wanted to go on, we would help them with that process. So I do kind of all of those things.
That's wonderful. It's so encouraging to me to hear that in North Carolina, we have such a powerhouse of community college system and how it becomes an opening door for education for many, many families. Heidi, so I know you said you bring a little bit of experience in different areas. What are some of the, in your opinion, what are some of the biggest selling points of the North Carolina Community College system, like Durham Tech?
Sure. Well, I would say there's quite a lot of them. Some of it has to do with proximity to your home. So there are, as you mentioned, there's a large, wonderful community college system here in North Carolina. So we have 58 community colleges with the idea that there's access for everyone all over North Carolina, that they shouldn't have to go very far to find a campus. of one of the community colleges. Many of them have multiple campuses that reach out, to all the constituents in North Carolina. So, closeness to your home is definitely one benefit. The cost of attendance is much lower than you'll see at private institutions or universities. So for a lot of students, one of the main reasons they start at the community college is, the difference in cost, and for getting some of, especially if you're talking about university transfer, many of the same classes you would the first 2 years at a university, you can take at the community college at a much lower cost. Most community colleges, the class size is much smaller, and there's lots and lots of support to help students sort of at any level and with, kind of any need. So I think that's a real benefit, especially compared to some of the size of many university classes. And I think because we have an open door policy, and that, again, wherever the student is, we want to take them from that place and help them get to the goal that they want to be at. So like I said, if they haven't finished high school, we can help you with that. If you have already, have a career, already have a college degree, but you're coming back to because you want to change careers, we can help you with that. So really, we can just kind of help people at whatever level they are with whatever kind of educational access they need. And we help whole families. One family member might be learning English, another family member might be, going back and getting career training, another person might be working on getting their bachelor's degree. So I think, there's access points for anyone of any age and any background. So I think those are some of the main selling points. There's lots more. Some of the ones I think I wanted to highlight.
Juan and I were having this conversation not too long ago about defining success. What success looks like to you might look very different to me. And I feel like the community college really capitalized on that, because for someone might be, I need to get some training so I can go to work tomorrow, or, in the short future. And then for some of them might be, I want to transfer to a 4-year institution, or for some of them, I want more like a career and technical degree. So I love that flexibility. Juana, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you, Juanes, that when I'm talking with students, I always tell them, community colleges are really great because they offer something for everybody, for even the parents, or the parents want to go and take some courses, get a certification in something, right? There's something for everyone. So I love the community college system, and there's definitely something there for everyone. Heidi, was wondering just a little bit about, is there a different process for U.S. citizens versus non-U.S. citizens when it comes to enrolling for classes? What are the biggest differences?
Sure. Well, there are many differences because it's not really U.S. citizen or not, because there's so many different categories among non-U.S. citizens. But I would say for U.S. citizens and U.S. permanent residents and refugees and those who have been approved for asylum, and there's a few other categories, they are eligible for federal financial aid. So they would go through the process just like any other American citizen student who can qualify for financial aid. So that is one of the main benefits for them. And if they've lived in North Carolina for 1 year, then they should also be able to qualify for in-state tuition, which is really important. If you don't know, in the state of North Carolina, we have 2 different levels of tuition. We have the in-state resident tuition, designed for people who've been living here for at least 1 year and been paying taxes and things like that. So they're eligible to qualify for that lower tuition rate. And then we have an out-of-state tuition rate for students that haven't been living here, or who by the North Carolina residency requirements don't meet those requirements. And so they would actually have to pay that higher level. And it is, unfortunately, a pretty significant difference. It is over, I would say, 3 times as much. Just to give you some numbers, I wrote these down so I wouldn't get them wrong. Per credit, it's $130 for in-state and $322 for out-of-state with the fees at Durham Tech. It would be almost the same, but the fees might be slightly different at any other North Carolina community college. So it is, a significant difference. Part of the application process, would be everyone would do an application. Everyone would now go through this residency determination service that does determine whether you're qualified for in-state or out-of-state. If you are eligible for financial aid, you would want to go through that process. Most institutions would also have orientation where they're learning about the college. There may or may not be testing depending on your educational background, and you'd want to submit those documents. And then depending on your immigration status, again, you might have more or less benefits as far as tuition status and things like that. I do want to, however, say that there is a policy in North Carolina that if you are an undocumented student, you can attend the North Carolina Community College curriculum programs as long as you've graduated from a U.S. high school. But unfortunately, you would not be able to continue with the curriculum programs if you don't have documents and have not graduated from a North Carolina high school. So that is one difference. Now, that does not matter as far as our ESL, adult high school, and continuing education programs. That would be an impediment for students if they were trying to seek a certificate, diploma, or degree program through what we call the curriculums credit programs.
So just to make sure I understood correctly what you said, you're saying if you don't have, if you're undocumented, you still will be able to go. It might be something that might limit you in terms of like a licensing board, like you still be able to complete your program, but afterwards, what you're saying is, like, let's say you want to study nursing, right? They might not be able to practice as a nurse until maybe that gets, your documents get changed to a different status. Is that?
Yes, but I do think it's very important for everyone to be aware about possible limitations or challenges for whatever programs they're interested in up front. Because nursing programs in most community colleges are competitive. In fact, we always have many more applicants than spaces. So some colleges do limit it for students that would not be eligible for licensure. So that's one thing to consider. Also, of course, I just never want a student to spend years and years towards a degree and then find out afterwards that they're not going to be eligible to practice in the state or in the United States or, whatever. So I do think it's really important for students, to do that research and work with the counselors and instructors about their particular situation to make sure they're going to be eligible to reach the real goal that they want, which would be, in your example, practicing as a nurse. Nursing is one of those that, definitely would be an issue for admission in some cases, but definitely for licensure if you have an undocumented status.
Yeah, one of the things that Juan and I emphasize a lot in our conversations with students is the preparation piece. And I feel like this is a good thing that we need to be aware in order to start preparing for whatever we want. So having those conversations. Now, Heidi, so I know that we need to have those conversations, right? But every institution, as you mentioned, it's set up very differently. Where do we have those conversations, with who, and any recommendation on how to go about that?
So I would always start with the admissions office. And then I think one of the most difficult things might be is, many people are afraid to disclose their status. But I would want to say that I think most people that work in a community college, since that's what we're talking about today, they're in it because they really believe in open door access. They believe in, students reaching educational goals. They're there to help the community. And so I think although some people might be afraid to disclose that information, hopefully they can find someone that they feel comfortable to do that with, because unless that information is disclosed, it's hard to get them to the right person who might have that expertise or who might be able to know, what are the considerations that they really have to make based on their status, or it could be their income or their disability. I mean, it's not always about immigration status. So I would really encourage students to find someone, to disclose that to, and then ask, what are the resources on campus. We are very lucky at Durham Tech in that we have a Center for the Global Learner that works with students who are educated outside the country or who are non-U.S. citizens. So we have a central office for that, but every institution is organized differently, whether it's a community college or a university. And so the way they have divided up the responsibilities might be different. But I would start with the admissions office. And if you're concerned about disclosing your own personal thing, you could just ask, if you knew of an undocumented student that was trying to apply for X program, who on this campus could they talk to? And that way, you're not having to give your personal details up front. But I think it's really important. There have been many issues in my professional career where if we had the information up front from the student, we could have helped them earlier or better. So, I really think most people that work at community colleges, they're there because they want to help people. So if you can give that information and ask who to talk to, I think you'll find people that do really want to support you as much as they can.
Yeah, and I just want to add that there are a lot of students that are working with school counselors or maybe college advisors or a trusted individual adult in their community. And so if the student doesn't feel comfortable talking to the admissions rep who maybe they've just met, really encouraging them to talk to their counselors, or maybe their counselors or teachers or whomever it is that they're trusting to kind of serve as those advocates for the student. And reaching out to the admissions representatives or kind of trying to connect them with the right person in that college or in that community. So thank you for sharing that. And I did have a question in regards to, I know you mentioned a little bit about the in-state and out-of-state. So do community colleges, do they offer any financial support for students that may be undocumented, DACA, or who may not be eligible to receive financial aid?
Sure. So there are a couple of laws on the books specifically for community colleges and residency that I want to talk a little bit about. And then I would also say that all community colleges generally have, hopefully access to some financial resources. And so they've made decisions on, how they can support students with those. So many of the community colleges have foundations that have scholarships specific to that college. So students definitely want to, contact the financial aid office or the scholarship office, to find out what they might be eligible for as entering right out of high school, or if they're coming back later in life, or if they've completed some part of education and now they're coming back to complete it at a later time. There are different financial resources within the state, within counties, and within institutions. But again, that's something you really are going to have to ask about. Some may even be automatic. We're very lucky in Durham in that we get some money from sales tax. And so we can utilize that money to help for scholarships, specifically for students who are just coming out of high school, because we really wanted to encourage students to, pursue higher education directly after high school. But in other institutions I know have scholarships we don't have, or different scholarships. So I think it's important to ask about those or find out about those and do research on those. And if there's things for high school students, a lot of times high school counselors, hopefully are aware of those. But there are some laws on the books specifically about tuition sponsorship that students may be able to take advantage of at community colleges. There is something called employer-sponsored tuition, which means if you're working for an employer in North Carolina and the employer wants to pay to support your education, then the employer can pay, and regardless of what residency you have as far as your in-state versus out-of-state tuition, the employer will only have to pay the in-state tuition for you. So that is a benefit for students who are working who may not be eligible for in-state tuition on their own. Each community college might process that paperwork differently or require different paperwork, so you need to contact the business office or the admissions office about how that would work. But that is definitely a benefit that many students are able to take advantage of, and thank goodness their employers are wanting to support their employees to get education, so that's great. There's also something very specific to if you meet certain criteria for nonprofits to also support students sort of in the same way. They're not necessarily employees of the nonprofit because that would fall under employer sponsored, but maybe they're volunteering with a nonprofit, they're connected to the nonprofit, and they're also willing to sponsor students, that they're familiar with for their educational pursuits. And again, they would pay the in-state tuition rate regardless of the status of the student's tuition rate. So those are two definite benefits. But again, definitely looking into what other resources might be available. And again, there might be different ones depending on how you're entering the college, as a new student, as an older student, as a student trying to complete.
So what I liked about is that we have these laws in the entire state, but then it's up to each individual institution to make them happen. So I understand that we have the same law, everybody, the sponsorship, but the way that is handled Durham Tech could be very different from how it's handled in other parts of the state. So thank you for highlighting that.
For sure.
The second piece of this cafecito virtual, Heidi, would be to learn from you about some of those things that Durham Tech is doing that is so different from maybe other schools, or maybe not, but some of those success that you are having, and maybe that would give us maybe a little bit of examples to share with counselors, with students, of some of the things that they could experience at the community college, or even as the counselors are looking at this, or ways for them to implement new programming and new things. So what are those some success that you have had at Durham Tech?
Well, I think we've been very successful with our center in trying to utilize some of the amazing students we have on our campus. We have a program where we, hire students to work in our office, and, really they're the face with the public that's coming in, and they're assisting, students with the enrollment process, or which office to go to, or information, such as some of the things we've been talking about, employer sponsorship, or admissions, etc. So I think we've been really successful in utilizing those students that might be a familiar face, that are bilingual, to really help assist people who are interested in different programs in the college. I think that's also a great benefit because they're, the person who's coming in is talking to someone who was in their position a year or so ago when they were, wanting to pursue some kind of educational goal. We also have a special position in our office that's called International Student Ambassador. And that student, has worked with us for quite some time, and she goes around with us or on her own to give presentations about college access, especially to the Hispanic and Latino community. And she does these presentations in English and Spanish, and she's the second ambassador we've had. So, we're continuing to get new students and train them and put them out in the community, because when she goes to a high school classroom, I think the high school students, really love hearing from her much more than they like hearing from me. It's been a little while since I was in my college program. So I think they just really like hearing from a student that was sitting in the seat that they're sitting in, 2 years ago, and why they chose the path they chose, what were the challenges they had. So I think that's been like one really great thing that we've done. And, it takes work, to work with these students and, educate them about all the programs and ins and outs and things about the college, but it's such a growth opportunity for them. And it's, so wonderful because I think they really make real connections into the community that maybe we couldn't do on our own with a limited staff. So I think that's been one of our major successes. We've tried really hard to get more and more and more information on the website. Some also translated into Spanish, which I think has been helpful, to just really have all the information out there. But of course, that doesn't mean that we're going to say, you need to read the website. Like, we're still, going to answer all the questions and meet with people individually. In fact, I think most of our staff one of the things they love about their job is meeting with individual students and individual family groups, you know, to talk about options. But I do think we have tried to add a wealth of information so that, and hopefully organized it in a way that people can find it, so that, you know, it's not a question of, you know, maybe where can you find that employer sponsored tuition? It's linked from our website, it's linked from financial aid, it's linked from multiple places, so that it's available.
I love, Heidi, that you provide such a welcoming area. I guess even having students being the front face, I think that provides this welcoming environment that not many schools are doing. Many times Juan and I hear for parents and students being afraid or even going and visiting this school. The other point that you mentioned that I think not many schools do as well as you're doing is really leveraging that wealth that our communities have, the language, being bilingual, being bicultural, having that experiences in bringing that. Thank you for doing that, because I feel like we can learn a lot from you and from what you're doing. And then from the student perspective too, being involved in organizations like the Global Learner Center, I think it provides them real opportunities to engage in real world situations. Like, this is our reality, right? So I love that. And I love also that you as a counselor are providing that pathway. You know, I'm sure you probably have to have difficult conversations with your administration and advocacy and all that stuff, but I feel like those are making a difference. Maybe if, you know, I'm sure your students will probably say, being part of this program changed my life.
Yeah, I hope so. I keep up with many of the students, you know, once they've graduated. It's hard to lose them, but of course, you know, we're part of an educational institution. We want them, you know, to go on and influence the community and get more education if they desire. So yeah.
So without disclosing like any specifics, but could you tell us what are some of those things that your students now, you know, you saw them whenever they had no idea what to do. What are some of them doing now?
So we have quite a few students that were really, you know, amazing students, and they applied for lots of different scholarships. We have several students that are at universities, you know, on full rides, getting their bachelor's and or master's degree. I just saw an announcement from a student who'd taken some classes at Durham Tech a while back, who said he's starting medical school in the fall at UNC. You know, we have students working in accounting and working in automotive and, you know, just all kinds of things. And we see them around the community, you know, and they finish their first step and they might be saving money, you know, to go on to the next step. So I think that, like you said, the good thing is we've worked with all these students, you know, even just in the classroom or through student organizations, or, you know, just through the admissions process, and see them on campus many different times. And we can see them, you know, throughout Durham and throughout Chapel Hill and Hillsborough and, you know, even Raleigh. And we can see, you know, that they're spreading like the word of, you know, how they were able to access education, and that, you know, all their friends and family and community members can do so too.
I'll let Juana ask question, and I do have a last question that is in my mind, but go ahead, Juana.
Yeah. Well, it's more of a comment, but I just want to say that I've had the opportunity to visit Heidi at her office, and I just felt so welcomed, and I felt so at home when I walked into the office, because, you know, the first thing that I saw was a Latina who like was bicultural. Like, she spoke my language and greeted me in Spanish, and it just felt so beautiful to have had experienced that, because you don't really experience that just at any community college. And so I really appreciate that you're giving those opportunities for growth to the students. And I love to hear the stories of success that you just shared. And I think that a lot of times, you know, we work with students that are discouraged and they're desanimados, where they feel that there are no opportunities, or like there are a lot of roadblocks. But like, just hearing you share those stories is just inspiring. And hopefully students that are hearing this they can see that, you know, it just takes them to take those steps and to connect with the right people, and to really echarle ganas, right? Echarle ganas, and to make sure that they're not giving up. It is going to be difficult. It may not be as easy for them, but they have to push forward and know that there is a lot out there for them to pursue. And I also just want to say, excuse me, I have learned so much from Heidi. When I came into this role, I just have learned a lot and appreciate, you know, just you taking the time to learn about these policies and taking the time to, you know, teach me and to help me understand and learn. And so thank you so much for just being the advocate and for everything that you do for the students.
Well, I really appreciate it. I love, you know, sharing the information, and hopefully that's, you know, just getting more and more opportunities, you know, for people to reach their goals, whatever those goals were. I started as an ESL teacher and taught out of the country, and then used to teach actually at Durham Tech part-time in addition to what other job I had, just so I could have that connection with students when I was having jobs where maybe I wasn't able to share positive information all day, but at least I could go to the ESL class and meet students and try to inspire them to continue and learn about them and their families. So, so I love what I do. I did want to say also, it was very much just the way things happened, but I joined Durham Tech this summer right before DACA came out. So I was learning just the same time as everyone else how, you know, what that was going to mean, and, you know, what benefits that might open up for students, but also what challenges they might have. And so, like, that all came about right after I started at Durham Tech, and I've loved watching DACA students that could, you know, get some of the benefits with DACA, you know, really be able to pursue their education or, you know, get more things. So, you know, it's a learning process for all of us when laws change or, you know, things become more difficult or less difficult. It's something we, you know, hopefully we're all working together towards the same goal.
So Heidi and Juana, you guys, both of you mentioned actually my next point.
Okay.
And I feel like we need to highlight it. We need to highlight it. And the reason I tell you that is because we work every day and we see the challenges. We know what the students are experiencing. We working with mixed status. You know, some of them may be U.S. citizens, some of them may be permanent residents, some of them may be refugees. But then we also work with undocumented and deferred action DACA students. But I feel like not everybody really understands what are some of those challenges. And I know Heidi mentioned challenges, Juana mentioned challenges. Let's bring them out to the table. Let's highlight them. What are some of those challenges that our students, non-U.S. citizen students specifically, because I feel like if we can probably, financial aid is probably going to be a big deal. So I'm thinking our U.S. citizens and permanent residents and eligible students that can complete FAFSA should complete FAFSA, and that's really going to help them out. Let's focus on those students that don't have that opportunity. And then we can talk about non-U.S. citizen challenges in general. But what are some of those 2 or 3 challenges? I'm going to start with Heidi and then with Juana. What are those 2 or 3, 1 to 3 challenges that you see that we need to highlight right now?
Mm-hmm. Oh gosh, there's so many, and they're so individual. I would say that, you know, the cost of attendance, even if a student is able to get employer sponsorship, you know, it's still, college is still expensive. It's still money, and it's still time. So I think that being able to afford the program, you know, whether that's a non-credit class or a, you know, credit class, you know, finances are always a challenge, especially for students who might be financially challenged, just living day to day already. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges. We talked a little bit earlier about licensure, and for undocumented students, sometimes DACA students even, and other students where they're in a pending status, where especially like they're filing for asylum, but that might take a long time to know if that case is going to be approved or not. Those students often have issues with if they're wanting to do any kind of coursework that ends up with a certification or licensure. They really need to be aware of what those individual licensure certification rules are, because they may not want to go into a program if they cannot get the licensure, which most employers may require. So that's really important, and it's hard to give you a yes, no on that. Everything varies on that. So I'd say that's a big challenge. I think sometimes fear is a challenge, just fear, and we talked about, of disclosure, of not knowing, of maybe you and or your family came from a different country and you have a different educational background, so you're just not sure how higher education in the United States works at all. But hopefully you can come and talk to someone or find a familiar face on campus that you want to talk to. We really want to work with first generation students. That's one, I think, another benefit of the community college. Many students at community college are first generation, whether you previously were educated in a different country, your parents are from a different country. We're here to help you try to understand how that process works and how it's different here. So I'll start with those.
Okay.
And I'll add a few as well. Some of the things that I see a lot is just the lack of access to information, or not knowing where to get that information has been a huge challenge that I have seen with a lot of students and families, just not knowing where to start. And then with that comes a lack of connections with individuals in their community. Like, for example, not really connecting or networking with, connecting with their school counselors, connecting with the resources that they have at school. Some of the students, they're almost like afraid or shy to ask for help. And so they're not asking for help. They're trying to do it on their own. And so then they get discouraged. They get discouraged because then they start hearing information that's not true, right? They may hear, well, you cannot go to college because you are undocumented, but that's false. That's a myth. Like, you can go to college, right? You can go to any college or university as long as you meet the criteria requirements to enter. And so they're trying to do things on their own without looking for getting that support that they need. And so I really encourage students and families to connect. Whether it's their school counselors, whether it's their college advisor, whether it's their local community organization, it's, us, anyone that can help them. But just, not knowing how to access the information and where to access it, not connecting with the right people. And just, I see a lot of students that have so much potential. There's so much potential in these students. And sometimes, they're too afraid to, push forward, to just say, all right, I'm going to do this. I got this. They're shy. They're shy. And maybe it's that fear. And sometimes I just want to grab the student and be like, come, let's go do this. You got it, because I'm so passionate and I see the potential in them. But it's just afraid, or they're shy. They're afraid to fail. And that's kind of what I've seen a lot of the students. And then I get to work with a lot of students that, they're on top of it. They're like, I've done this, and I've connected with so-and-so. But then we do have those students that, they're a little bit more shy or nervous, not knowing what steps to take.
So Juana started actually with my last point, and it's really, we come from a privileged position. Each of us have access to information and to opportunities that not everybody has, okay? So thinking from that perspective, what advice, we call it consejitos. In each of these Cafecito Virtual, really what we do is we give consejitos, right? So if you have to think about consejitos to give to our audience, either the students, the families, the counselors, what would you tell them?
Yeah. I think if there's any way you can connect to anyone in your network, it would be a good thing. Is there someone at your church who went to a college, or has a job you want in the future or something? Start connecting with them and asking, what do they need to do to get that job, or how did they go to college, or, I think just trying to connect with as many people as you can that are either doing the things you want to do or have a family member who is doing on the path of something you want to do, usually people love to tell you about their past and, you know, changes they would make now, or, you know, things like that. People love to talk about themselves. So I think it is, people are very nervous to ask questions, but, you know, try to network with everyone in your community, your church, you know, the places you shop, through family members, through colleagues and friends, you know, to start those conversations, because you never know where there's a lead, and, you know, hopefully they'll, you know, direct you to very friendly people that, you know, will help you sit down and figure out your goals and your process and how to get started. It's amazing how everybody knows people that you never knew they knew.
I love that. Even in for those of you that like reading, there's a lot of information also in about mentorship, but also sponsorship, and that's really what Heidi's saying. It's moving beyond that mentoring piece. But how do I take someone to a conference? How do I find maybe funds for a internship opportunity, or how do I, you know, thinking about that sponsorship? It's also very popular. So thank you so much, Heidi. That's a great consejito. How about you, Juana?
Yeah, my consejito is more for the educators and counselors. I really encourage, you know, them to inform themselves of the opportunities for various students from different backgrounds. I have worked with some counselors that they are very well versed. They're very knowledgeable of the different opportunities. It could be tuition policies. It could be financial aid. You know, anything around college access. And so I really encourage them to take the time to, you know, watch this video and other CFNC resources, because we are really working to share information so that we can support these students together. Because I mean, Juanes and I and Heidi, we can't do it. We cannot reach every single student, but these students, some of the students and the counselors are connecting every day, right? When they're in schools, they're connecting every day.
Very well said.
And to students and helping them with college access, that they take the time to understand the policies and the opportunities for students, but whether it's scholarships and internship, or like Heidi was saying, sponsorship opportunities, right? Again, you all are with these students every day, and the families trust you, the students trust you, and so having that information and having it visible for the students, whether it's on bulletin boards, or finding a way to communicate the message with the students without them having to actually come and ask if they're not comfortable. It's another way to kind of support the students as well.
Thank you, Juana. Well, wonderful. I think we have had such a fun conversation. I believe this is the starting conversation for many other conversations, because really what a situation like this, or what a Cafecito Virtual does to me specifically, it gets me excited to think about more things that I haven't thought before. So thank you so much, Heidi and Juana, for taking the time to share your knowledge and your expertise with our families, the students and counselors. And I hope that we stay connected and then continue to do good work that's happening. So thank you so much, Heidi, for highlighting Durham Tech, for what you do. And then I do hope that more schools, I'm challenging some of the schools watching us to have a place like the Global Center where students feel welcome. It could be a place, I call it a espacio de confianza, a trustful space in which students can feel very comfortable. So thank you for doing that, Heidi. You're really showing us the way. So thank you. Anything else?
I was just going to say, for any of the counselors or schools or, you know, nonprofits, anyone who's watching, feel free, please, you know, to contact your local community college and ask questions. I often have counselors that call me and they seem to be apologizing for asking me questions, and that's what we're here for. So please don't apologize. Like, keep bothering us, keep asking questions. We're here, you know, to help students reach their goals. So many, I think, I don't want to speak for all community colleges, but I think all community colleges would want to come into your classroom if that's something you think would be helpful, or have, you know, group sessions with students or parents, etc. So, you know, please just reach out and ask those questions, or, you know, get to know the people on the campuses where you might be sending students.
Any last departing words, Juana?
No, I just want to say thank you so much, Heidi, for your time.
Thank you all.
And I definitely, like you were saying, anyone that has any questions, we're here to answer those questions, to support students. Estamos aquí para ustedes, familias. Espero que puedan utilizar nuestros recursos.
Bueno, today we were with Heidi White from Durham Tech Community College, Juan Hernandez from College Foundation of North Carolina. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can learn more about some exciting videos that are coming up in the pipeline. And please stay in touch, help each other, and then we hope to see each other soon and hug each other soon. So salud. Salud. Cuídense mucho. Hasta luego.
Thank you.
Bye.